Mr. Trump has justified many of the really terrible things he has done as a human being on the grounds of the risk of crime. The whole campaign against immigrants has been premised on a notion of crime that the FBI's own statistics undercut. It is well known, for example, in the United States and in most other countries, that crimes are less committed by immigrant communities than by the native-born communities. And the reason for that is very simple. If you're an immigrant, especially one without adequate papers, an arrest is tantamount to being deported. In other words, whatever the punishments are for the crime regularly, you get the additional punishment of being thrown out of the house you live in, out of the relationships you're in. It's awful. And therefore, in part, there's less crime among those folks because they know they have to steer clear of the whole quote-unquote criminal justice system. And that's been true in Europe. It's true here. But he went ahead and said it anyway. And the newspapers parroted it, at best sometimes saying, oh, by the way, the government statistics do not bear out the notion that this is a particularly criminal population. And immediately the government statistics that were brought out in this case indicate that the rate of crime in Washington has been diminishing over recent years, not increasing over recent years. And therefore, there's less reason to point to crime now than there would have been before. And let's remember, what he's doing, we know what the results will be. I live in Manhattan. Under previous mayors, we have had particularly cleaning up Times Square. And what was the reason given? Crime. And here's the results. Do the people that are hassled, who are either arrested for a while, or then since you can't hold them, they haven't done anything, they're homeless in the downtown area, what do? You move them. That's all you've done. You've relocated these people. You haven't solved the problem. If they're homeless, if they're hanging around, which is really what this is about, getting the homeless out of the vision of what you can see. So you scatter them. Here in New York, we now have people sleeping in doorways all over the city instead of being concentrated in a few areas. That's what a very expensive policy achieved, because these policies don't even make an effort, don't even make a theater piece out of trying to solve the problem. They're not bringing down the price of housing, which would make it possible for people not to be homeless. They are not bringing up the level of pay for people so they can afford the expensive. They're not solving the problems of the people they're going to be hassling. They're just hassling them, arresting them, dispersing them, relocating them, and then, in a level of hypocrisy that blows your mind, thinking they have solved the problem when they've done nothing of the sort. And here's the final point. If you actually were going to arrest large numbers of people, and that's the premise, if the crime is the problem, which is phony, but if you're going to say that, then you have to follow it up with arrests, because otherwise you haven't done anything about the problem of the crime, and you are exposed in that way. So we're going to arrest a lot of people and throw them in jail. Let me tell you all what you already know. Putting people in jail solves nothing. They come out of jail almost always in worse shape than they went in. Jail doesn't help them redevelop them, rebuild their personalities. It damages them because of the conditions in the jails. That's why we have a recidivism rate in this country above 70% of the people who come out of jail find their way back in. You know what the sign of a declining society is? That. When it can't handle the problems in a city, it can't find a solution. It finds make-believe, cruel solutions that don't work and that actually make the problem worse because the institutions don't work either. This repetition of the "it doesn't work," that's your clue that what we got here, beyond the fascistic move by a megalomaniac president, what we also have is a display of layered failures that solve nothing. I hold the liberal establishment of this country, and by that I mean the Democratic Party leadership alongside the Republican Party leadership for most of the last 70 years, responsible. They are the ones who wrote or amended the laws that enable or excuse what the president is doing. And I know why they did it, because they told us as they were doing it why they were doing it. They had been traumatized by what happened in the 1930s, that a coalition arose of communists, socialists, the CIO, that really pushed American politics to the left. That's when we created Social Security, unemployment compensation, a federal jobs program, the first minimum wage. I mean, take a look at it. We did things in 5 years that the country hadn't been able to do before that in 150. So it was a move to the left. They were traumatized, and they wanted to make sure, here comes the irony, that they would put into place the institutions and the laws to make sure that the future presidents could prevent anything like that coming. Now, let me translate. To prevent anyone on the left mounting the kind of program that they could ascribe to the Soviet Union or something like that. And there's a fantastic irony that the people making use of all those laws are not the extreme left in America, it's the extreme right. And they're doing it, let's remember, the extreme right, when they had a progressive president like Roosevelt, developed an immense passion for local rights, states' rights, cities' rights, the local. What are they doing now? Running roughshod across states' rights, city. They don't care about any of that. Now that they have the president and the Supreme Court, they're going to use all of that power that was intended to block the left to destroy not just the left, but the middle, in order to create a theocratic, right-wing, free market loony bin and wait for it to implode, which it will, because we've seen this movie before. So this is the rehab. That's what we're watching. So yeah, it is carrying out, Project 2025, exactly this kind of realignment of social forces. They don't have the courage to talk about fascism yet, although it's coming. They will advocate it, or some metaphor that will stand in for it. But it is remarkable to all local democratically elected officers are pushed aside so that the person who was never elected to run the city of Washington, D.C., can do it. And it has all the overtones that we are now smart enough to see. The racial dimension. The poor are disproportionately black in Washington, D.C. Everyone who's ever been there knows that. And the proportion of blacks in the military being brought in is much smaller than what it is in the community that they will be oppressing. All of that is going on. You can see the pandering to, for other people, it will be seen as making Washington white again. And that metaphor is a truism about what this is all for. These are steps in moving in that direction. And they have to now be dramatic steps because the failures of the Trump program are beginning to intrude upon the popular awareness. When he fired an absurd dramatic act, he fires the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he doesn't like the bad numbers about jobs that came out about April, May, and June. Right, this is the kind of, he's now doing another dramatic takeover. Is there an urgency? No. Is there an emergency in Washington? No. Is there, drama in the streets? No. He's doing this in part to distract from where he's failing. He didn't end the war in Ukraine and has no prospect at this point of doing it. He didn't solve the problems in Gaza. And he didn't solve the economic problems. The wages are not going up, and the prices of what we pay for our basics are not going down. And these are all things he said would happen, on day one of my new administration. We are now 7 months, and he's not got it. That's part of what's going on here. And we shouldn't be distracted. On the other hand, you're right to bring it up because it is another sad milestone on this drive to make America great again, which looks an awful lot like making the employers absolute ruler of the workplace, making white people dominate over non-white people, natives over immigrants. Look at it. It's a tableau, and it's being finished as we speak. Yeah, I think you're sadly right about that. I don't understand as well as I wish I did how it is possible for them to do this. I've always understood that an under message, if you like, below the surface is an unchanged racism that runs back into slavery and all of that. Most Americans know that. If you go to South, you see it pretty quick. It's a whole different way of people interacting. But I'm struck by how easy it has seemed to be to, even in the formalities of public life. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we were all regaled, I think you saw it as well as I did, by the decision of the Secretary of the Defense to reconstruct a statue, I believe in Washington or in Virginia perhaps, of a Confederate general that had been torn down in that effort of half the country to destroy the Union in order to preserve slavery. I mean, it's what are you saying? What a bizarre way of holding on to not what is best about the country, but what is worst about it. I mean, slavery is a horror and is so recognized in almost every established religion and everything else. What is going on? The holding on to that is the ability of the people who run this society, the capitalist employer class, in my view, which is too small to control a big country, needs allies among the mass of working people, and will stop at nothing when it comes to what the basis of that. So if there's a part of the people that are upset by their circumstance in a way that you can capture by talking about making America great again, of course you will. And if pandering to what's left of racism is a useful tool, do they worry about the long-term effects of it? Of course not. Do they worry about the social ramifications? No. It's a useful way to get a bunch of votes, or to translate. It's a useful way to take a portion of the working class and line them up so that they vote for the symbol, not understanding that that symbol, if it's elected, will keep you poor. That's the history of the country, and we're watching one particular moment in that it does it. For me, it leads me again to say, well, when the decline of the American empire got underway and we wondered how it would roil the economy underneath it, the answer is we're living through it. We are living through the disintegration, the splitting, the setting of parts of the country against one another that are the consequences of a capitalist empire that can't keep its empire anymore. That's what we're living through. And the setting of white against black is as predictable for a country like ours as any other of the splits that we are going to be seeing more and more of. The regional splits, the places where economics are okay, the top 20% versus the other 80%, all of that is cracking and separating. And you know, we will be, if I'm not wrong, and I may be, of course, but if I'm not wrong, we will be talking about the internal disintegration of this country a lot in the months ahead.